Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. We're waking up with watches and everything is for sale. Reach out to Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase and pricing. Today we're talking about a model that came out in 2015, 42 millimeters in titanium. This is the Tudor Pelagos Blue. Now the original Pelagos came out alongside the Black Bay in 2012. At the time they were both ETA powered. The arrival of an in-house caliber and a blue dial model coincided in 15. So we got what is Tudor's most forward-looking diver. This is not a retro watch, even though the hands are a little nod to the old Snowflake Submariners. This is actually a much more forward-looking diver than, for example, a Black Bay, and I'll show you why. So at 42 millimeters in diameter, it's not oversized. I would call it full-sized. This is a large sports watch, and that makes sense. Because within reason, a larger sports watch is a more visible tool watch. Now you can see that the lugs do not go beyond the end of my wrist. My wrist is 16 centimeters. It is thicker than a sub. That said, it also has more capability than a sub. The watch is incredibly comfortable. The bracelet, titanium, just like the case. We have a clamshell lock. Note the use of ceramic spring-loaded pin snaps internally so that the tolerances will always be snappy, as the titanium components cannot wear down those pin snaps. We have a much more deluxe diving clasp than the T-fit you'll find on others. Couple things going on here. First, we have the ability to anchor this bracelet over several preset detents, and you can see that right there. You can also draw it out and allow it elastic free range. So this will expand and contract as your wrist expands and contracts with the depth. So if you don't want to use one of the presets, you can allow it to operate automatically. There is also, and you can see it right there, a fold-out dive extension. So we have 3 different ways to adjust the length here. You can use the set positions, the elastic variability, and then the fold-out extension. This can be used over a dive suit, dry, wet, or even a thick winter coat. Now, the bezel is a robust 60-click design. Easy to place, with a micro knurling that's easy to grip, hands wet, sweaty, or gloved. We have a ceramic bezel inlay. Remember, for years on the Black Bay, it was a anodized insert. This was always the more deluxe model. The bezel is fully loomed, as are all 3 hands, so critically you know if you're diving at night or you're diving deep that your dive watch is still running. And we have solid blocks of loom. These may look like they're printed features, but you can see they sit within little recesses in the Reveil. They're actually solid pieces of loom with 3-dimensional qualities. Stop seconds, quick set date. One of the reasons I say this is more capable than a sub, it's a combination of the diving depth, 500 meters versus 300 on the sub. And if you want a helium escape valve on a Rolex, you got to step up to a Sea Dweller. Inside, we have caliber. And actually, it tells you right there, MT5612. It's a Kinesi movement, which is to say Tudor's own. Automatic winding with a 70-hour power reserve, stop seconds, quick set date, certified chronometer, full balance bridge, free sprung balance, anti-magnetic silicone hairspring. There is a lot to love. A great point of entry into the world of Swiss divers. Really, in terms of pure capability, unless you're doing something crazy, this is all the dive watch you will ever need. And Tudor is not a stepping stone, in my opinion. Tudor is a collecting theme in its own right. Okay, so we're gonna move to a watch that is possibly just as much fun, though from a considerably more veteran name. Now, Vacheron Constantin has been around since, well, how about the 1750s? A quarter of a millennium, 1755, and we are talking about the oldest continuously operating Swiss watchmaker. It's never been defunct. It didn't go bust during the quartz crisis. It was never revived by a major luxury group. There has always, during that period, been a Vacheron. This is the 3rd generation overseas chronograph. It debuted in 2016, though the inverse panda dial you see here came out 2 years later in 2018. In steel, 42.5 millimeters in diameter. This is probably the best integrated bracelet sports watch family going right now for the sheer suite of capabilities. 150 meters water resistance, solidly more than every Aquanaut, every Nautilus, every Royal Oak, and even every offshore except for the diver. It's also anti-magnetic with a soft iron inner ring that helps to bend magnetic field lines around the hairspring. Now, the only feature it doesn't have is hacking seconds. Aside from that, this thing is stacked. Screw down crown, screw down pushers, outstanding column wheel feel and sound, vertical clutch engagement, automatic winding, 52-hour power reserve. We have a quick release system for the bracelet. The watch comes with the bracelet and 2 straps, one in black rubber, one in black leather, and a separate clasp if you want to use one of the straps. Note, every single hand-finished link on this bracelet on both sides is removable, and each side of the watch features a sleeved quick adjustment system. So 1.5 millimeters there, 1.5 millimeters here. A very feature-packed bracelet. Close it all up. You can see the Maltese cross, the symbol of the brand. Taking a look at the reverse of the watch, something previously never featured on an overseas. Well, 3 things actually. A manufacturer movement, a display case back, and Geneva hallmark finish. And well, you can see the Poisson de Genève on the bridge adjacent to the column wheel. You can also see it on the case, as it is now a full watch standard. It's a large movement, nicely decorated, 5-position adjustment, and you can see 4 finishes on the 22-karat gold compass rose style winding rotor. You can see the Maltese cross at the center of the column wheel. The closer you get, the better the detail becomes. And it really is exquisitely finished. Look at the interior detailing of each one of these little links, every single one of them. A very special watch, and you can see why I consider it to be the best family of integrated bracelet steel sports watches going right now. But if you don't quite have Vacheron money, you want to stick with full bracelet steel, maybe a little bit more genteel, maybe a little bit more formal, something that's more of an office watch, but you want to stay with high horology, Jaeger-LeCoultre has you covered. Now, this is a model 40 millimeters in steel that is the latest in a long-running series of calendar wristwatches from Jaeger-LeCoultre, which have existed since at least the 1930s in caliber 412. As you can see, this is the Master Control calendar, and we have a triple calendar with a moon phase. So a radial date, day, month, moon phase. Now the watch does include a 40 millimeter steel case that's nice, slim, and elegant. Automatic winding. It features a 70-hour power reserve. You can see the movement on the back. Nicely decorated with genuine fire-blued screws and a solid gold rotor. It is not rose gold plated. It's also free-sprung. Recently, JLC has been upgrading its movement power reserves, so this 866 AA is now a true 70-hour power reserve movement. And of course, we have these little pull tabs on the bracelet, so you can pop the bracelet off the case. It comes with an accessory strap if you wish to wear it on a leather strap. Easy to wear. It's about 47.5 millimeters from lug to lug, just over 11 millimeters thick. I love Jaeger-LeCoultre. It is still one of my favorite brands, and I still do own a JLC in my Snowdrop Memovox, a vintage piece. This is a great way to get into handmade high horology watchmaking from one of the great brands in the history of the trade. We'll stick with JLC for a second and throw our recollection back to the 1990s when JLC was reestablishing its credibility in the business after a brush with death during the 80s. Now this is the Jaeger-LeCoultre Master Control Reveil. 39 millimeters in yellow gold. It is the latest, or at least it was in 1994, the latest, in a long-running series of Memovox wrist alarms dating back to the reference 3150 of 1950. So this is an alarm that is loud enough to wake you up. You wind it and you set it with this crown right here. And this model was made from about 1994 to 2004. Features caliber 918, an automatic Memovox caliber that is in-house. It is loomed, and you can see that it also features a loomed disc for setting the alarm. Now, this watch, from probably the second half of the model's production, about a 45-hour power reserve, and the alarm function here upgraded over previous Memovox models since the gong that is struck hangs freely, so it's louder and resonates better. It's not a rattly cricket style where the striker hits the case itself. Master Control, 1,000 hours, a 41-day test of the fully assembled watch in 6 positions of chronometry for winding efficiency, power reserve, water resistance, and overall durability. It was a full test of the assembled watch, one of the first in-house standards to go beyond the COSC. We have a single folding clasp right here. We'll throw the watch on the wrist. It's about 46.5 millimeters lug to lug, 39 millimeters. Don't confuse this with the Master Memovox that came out in 2010. This is an older sort of neo-vintage model that originated in the 1990s, but it hasn't aged today. This style is still right up to date and contemporary. Cars and watches, they always go together, but attempts to explicitly make car-themed watches almost always fall flat. So Chopard did not show its hand on this Mille Chronograph Luftgekult limited edition of 25 pieces for 2022. Luftgekult is a operation that is a Porsche enthusiast event organizer, shepherded by racing driver Patrick Long, himself a former factory driver for Porsche. Luftgekult holds events around the world for enthusiasts of air-cooled Porsche cars, and they describe each event as Luft number, so Luft 1, Luft 2, Luft 3. This watch was the second Chopard Luftgekult. The first was 39 millimeters. This one is 42. You can see the watch, DLC stainless steel, powered by a ETA 28942, which is a modular chronograph in chronometer grade. You can see the logo of Luftgekult on the back. There's smoked sapphire, 25 pieces, and I would say that's roughly an early 917. You can see 50 meters water resistant, but with a screw down crown. This is an actual swimmable 50 meters. The dial designed to be evocative of, but not literally representative of, the VDO instruments on vintage Porsche cars. Of course, the Mille line, named after the vintage road rally, itself named after the actual racing rally of the same name that was contested from 1927 to 1957. It became very dangerous later on, and so it was eventually discontinued, revived in 1977 as a rally for vintage cars. Chopard, under car enthusiast Carl Friedrich Schäufele, has been a sponsor since at least 1988, and that's when the Mille line of Chopard watches was born. So this is both a tribute to the Mille and to Porsche racing and road heritage. It is a chronometer certified, automatic winding, 42-hour power reserve. You can see it's fairly large, so I recommend a wrist my size or larger. It's fairly well loomed as well. There's a perforated leather design here that's designed to evoke Porsche upholstery from the classic era of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. But then when you flip it over, you can see the bottom is a tire tread pattern, much like what you'll find on other Mille watches. We have a vintage drilled out tri-spoke steering wheel on the crown. And fun fact about the 2894, a lot of folks mistakenly think that this is some sort of a cam and lateral clutch chrono. It's actually a column wheel vertical clutch chrono. And while the column wheel is very unusual, so, shall we say, it feels and sounds like a column wheel. And the vertical clutch engagement means that there's no jump or extraneous movement when you start the chrono. We have matted out hands. We have a sort of subdued aged orange like you would find on a vintage video gauge. We have a sort of circular concentric brushed pattern. We'll do a loom shot so you can see the watch. It's really quite well loomed. Easy to see, just not the chrono functions. You can see the time, no problem. And this is a great way to do a car-inspired watch because nothing is too overt on the dial side. From Ressence comes the Type 1 Squared. Launched in 2017, this was the first steel watch from the Belgian-Swiss hybrid. They design in Belgium, they build in Switzerland, founded by industrial designer Benoit Mintjens. It is a company that favors easy-to-read watches that are friendly and approachable. So they have this nice, approachable, and inviting hand as their logo. You will see it all over the watch. You will find it in unexpected places, like the pin of the pin buckle. 41 millimeters in diameter in steel. You can see it's a monoblock case because the bezel and the mid case are all one piece. It really wears like a wire lug Rodimer. That's how I would describe it. It's about 47 millimeters lug to lug, but you really need to think of it as a 41 millimeter square watch because that's how it wears. 11.8 millimeters thick. This one uses the older 2824 driver movement, but it still has the 107 piece Ressence orbital convex system display, which is the manufacturer watchmaking part of the watch. I'm going to do a quick loom shot. This is the black version of Super Luminova, so not super well loomed. I just want you to know that it's there. Another big change on the Type 1 1 squared was the introduction of a winding and setting lever, because you'll note there is no crown on this watch. Well, previously you would wind and set using the case back, but it was often difficult to get a purchase on it. Now with the lever, much easier to do. It is a regulator style dial in that everything is separated. We have our seconds, our minutes, and our hours. And you can see that the planetary system works by having each display rotate on its own axis as well as in relation to the center of the dial. We have a little display here that actually shows you the day, and that allows you to gauge AM and PM, and I'll show you how this works. So right here you can see it is 5 PM or AM. Let's take a look. We have these little I would describe them as a semi-day arcs, and 2 are hollow. Those are the weekends. It moves in a clockwise direction. So we have Monday, Tuesday, and then you can see the little indicator is in the second half of the arc. And so that little semicircle right there indicates second half of the day, so you're looking at 5 p.m. That's how you know. A really cool watch. It is automatic winding, 36-hour power reserve, and a very unique way of telling time. One of my favorite brands and one of the most innovative displays in watchmaking. One of the few that can legitimately claim to be doing something never done in an ancient industry. Here's something very special to me personally. I've always loved de Bethune. It is my favorite watch brand, neck and neck with Patek Philippe for my affections. I love them for different reasons. Patek for its vast history and back catalog, de Bethune for its extraordinary innovation during its short history. So this right here is 40 millimeters in titanium, a watch I dreamed about, the de Bethune DB25 Perpetual calendar, relaunched in a 40 millimeter case for 2022, the first union of the 40 millimeter case and the DB25 Perpetual. Now, the first time they used titanium on a DB25 Perpetual was on the green dial model at Dubai Watch Week in 2021, but it was still too big for me at 44 millimeters. The 40, which I begged them to bring back. I'm sure I wasn't the only one. I didn't make this happen, but it did fulfill my wish for a 40 millimeter titanium DB25 Perpetual. Now we have it. Super easy to wear at only 48 millimeters lug to lug. Feather light with a titanium case. Sapphire on front and back. Anyone can wear this thing. Finally, something that's unisex viable and also well proportioned and dimensioned for a wrist like mine, as well as those who just prefer smaller watches as a matter of taste. The strap here, you can see by Jean Rousseau, which is the OEM supplier to de Bethune. This one customized, though, with blue alligator leather, and you can see it almost has a little bit of a teal undertone, and genuine platinum stitching, very upscale. The dial, like the case and the movement, made in-house by de Bethune. They make their hands, their dials, their cases, and their movements like FP Journe vertically integrated, so they can keep production standards high, but also make very small production runs of parts that a supplier would force them to order in larger quantities. Now you can see this is a 2-part dial, as we have this toroidal ring outboard with the silvered Roman numerals, including a watchmaker's 4, polished and manually arced and curved leaf-style hands in titanium. We have a center dial that is guilloche cut, not stamped, but cut with a lovely rosette guilloche. Then we have the Perpetual calendar, day, date, month, leap year, moon phase. The moon phase is a patented design, spherical, 1/2 blued steel, 1/2 white palladium. You correct it once every 122 years. The Perpetual calendar system has changed a little bit since the early days of de Bethune, as there is now a quick set for the date and the month. And the Perpetual can deal with irregular length months, it can deal with leap years, no problems there. You can see on the reverse of the watch, this is an automatic winder with a 5-day power reserve, twin barrels. We have shock protection at the center of the winding rotor, and 1, 2, 3 shock protection springs for the balance. And that protects the balance staff pivots from fracturing, but it does more. It helps durability, but it also improves timekeeping and chronometry. The hairspring is 2 pieces of a flat hairspring cut apart, shaped manually, and micro-clamped back together, breathing concentrically like an overcoil for positional timing stability, but flat and shock-resistant like a flat hairspring. You can see that the bridges include snailing and media blasting. There's satination at the center on the cantilever springs, each of which is jeweled. We have blued titanium. Everything that's blue here is fired titanium. And then the triple parachute flanking springs for the balance bridge. You can see that's all steel with beveling on its side and satination on its top with all screw heads polished. The crown, in vintage fashion, is unbranded, but with a lovely and inventive combination of knurling and drilling outboard. This is as good as it gets. This is neck and neck with the DBD as the de Bethune I want most. A very special watch and a very rare one. All right, here's something outstanding from another independent that I esteem highly. Whereas de Bethune is known for innovating under its own name, Andreas Strehler, a famed independent watchmaker, is best known as a sort of go-to guy for engineering, and he designs everything. He'll design a whole watch or just a movement. He'll also design the tools to be used. He'll even program the software to be used to run any automated tools. And you can see where it comes from. A former prototypist for Renault Papi, he was the guy who would take the design and build the first example from absolute scratch, and then industrialize the process, creating all of the tools, all the procedures, and the technical manuals for the watchmakers who would then build the watches for Audemars Piguet, Renault Papi. And so, when he designs a watch under his own name, it's going to be something special. 41 millimeters across in steel. This is a 2016 launch made in 8 pieces. It is called the Time Shadow. And the watch features the familiar ovoid papillon design that is a signature of Strehler. You could see a wire-cut metal framed logo that is cut wire right there, inlaid in the dial, the papillon design. The minute hand is geared to the hour display, and the idea here that because it was the 8th movement by Andreas Strehler, it would be pool inspired with the hand like a cue and then the little sort of light colored backing, almost like the cue ball. And so you've got the cue and the cue ball, and you're teeing up all these other numbers, or at least that was the idea. The dial is all media blasted. You can see the crown is completely bespoke, a concave, fluted, faceted, and knurled design you won't find on anything else. The case is incredibly nuanced and fluid. It's actually about 47 millimeters lug to lug, so really easy to wear, and just over 10 millimeters thick. This is a watch that fits on a small wrist. With only 8 pieces made by one of the great modern masters, you're guaranteed exclusivity. Oh, and by the way, he's even designed one edition of the Harry Winston Opus series, so Strehler is the real deal. He is to independent watchmakers what Jaeger-LeCoultre was to companies that wanted to make minute repeaters in the 19th century. The watchmaker's watchmaker, the go-to, no job too hard, no project too large. Turning it all over, you can see the movement, which is exquisitely decorated. First, you could see that the bridges have been entirely hand-chiseled. Then we have these raised and relieved satin channels around the edge. You could see that they are a very, very fine media blast. Take a look at the wheels. Note how exquisitely they're internally beveled. That's something you won't see even on Geneva hallmark movements. To get that degree of interior angle definition on the inside of a wheel, absolute virtuosity. Take a look at the edges of these bridges. The beveling is second to none. It's broad, it's mirrored, it's rounded, and it's manual. We have 1, 2, 3 sharp interior angles on the bridges alone. All screw heads black polished with chamfered slots in circumference. We have a frosted golden bridge adjacent to a free-sprung balance that has an overcoil hairspring, twin mainspring barrels, a 78-hour manual wind power reserve with a stopworks. So rather than lose time, the watch will stop running thanks to the stopworks, an age-old master watchmaker technique that does wonderful things for accuracy, as it's easier to notice a stopped watch than it is to notice one that is slowly losing time. Taking a quick look, you can see, yes, the watch is loomed, and yes, you can read the hour in the dark. This is extremely special, and even I am unlikely to ever see another example. Finally, the weirdest thing you will see today. From Kross Studio, we have the Kross Studio Death Star tourbillon. Okay, process that for a minute. We have a central tourbillon that is the Death Star. we have a Imperial Star Destroyer for your hour hand, a Super Star Destroyer for your minute hand. We have script in Aurebesh, which is a language, or an alphabet, I should say, frequently featured in the Star Wars universe. This button says press to set time. These buttons say press to release. And indeed, there is a quick release system, so you can pop the strap right out and use one of the accessory straps that comes with the watch. You could see that the strap features the topography of the Death Star itself, with its sectors and channels, ravines and defenses. You will also notice that the outer circumference of the 44mm titanium case features a little ravine or trench like the Death Star itself did. You can also see that this is a crown-free watch like the Ressence. You press this button to engage time setting, and otherwise, you would use this lever on the case back to wind the watch. You can see that the mainspring barrel, there's one giant one underneath the Death Star tourbillon. It gives you 5 days of power reserve. The watch is elaborately loomed, almost like the glow you'll find in the corridors of Imperial ships. And you can see that the turbo laser of the Death Star acts as the seconds hand. Are you feeling this yet? This thing is crazy. And I haven't even gotten to the box. The box set for this watch is somewhere between the size of a fully packed duffel bag and a 55-gallon drum. It weighs over 100 pounds. It includes genuine movie props from Rogue One, including a full-sized Kyber crystal. It includes several accessory straps for the timepiece. Let's demonstrate how some of this works. Okay. So the watch is officially licensed by Disney and Lucasfilm. So this is how you wind it. Now I'm going to press the button that allows me to set the watch, and you can see the centrally located tourbillon jumps to attention. Now I can set the time with my hours, minutes, and seconds, and you can see right now we are looking at 5 o'clock. You can see the tourbillon oscillating inside the hemisphere of the Death Star, and I'm not really sure whether that is half of the original Death Star or a portrayal of the incomplete Death Star from Return of the Jedi. I suspect it might be the latter, because the Super Star Destroyer only appears in Return of the Jedi. And that's it right there, which according to the lore of Star Wars can actually transport 33,000 stormtroopers. This thing is absolutely crazy, and the box that comes with it is even nuttier. One of the most extreme commitments you could make to Star Wars fandom. I can also say, without a doubt, you will have the only example of this watch when you do attend the next Star Wars con. And you can see the Imperial symbol right there at the center. This is number 7 of 10, a lucky number. May the Force be with you. And given the theme right here, that's either side of the Force, since this is quite dark. If you love this watch or anything you've seen, I probably should have wound this more so you could see it oscillate, but you can watch it run on your wrist. Reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.